Hey, I can look at myself naked.
Oh, brother.
Scooby-Doo wasn't merely a cartoon come to life, it was Hollywood experimenting with how far they could stretch a Saturday morning legend before it broke. But behind the bright monsters, the neon decor, and the iconic mystery machine, what transpired was anarchy masquerading as mayhem. The 2002 live-action movie was never intended to be the squeaky clean family film most viewers recall. It began life as something else entirely, an R-rated parody that the studio buried under layers of edits, reshoots, and executive panic. What we saw on screen was the stitched-together ghost of a stranger, wilder version. And beneath all the glossy CGI and campy jokes, there was drama. Creative clashes, lost subplots, awkward romances that bled into real life, and decisions that still divide fans. Even the cast themselves weren't exempt, embroiled in the anxiety of how to pay respect to childhood heroes while stuck in a production that was unable to figure out what it was. The film was set out to be plain family comedy, but what it ended up as was a muddled mystery more complex than the villain's mask was ever. If this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel Star Vault TV, and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. When James Gunn initially took a seat to pen Scooby-Doo, he wasn't yet the Hollywood titan that we know and love today. He was still that rough-around-the-edges kid from Troma Entertainment, honing his edge on low-rent horror comedies. His Scooby-Doo script cut full-throttle parody, packed with filthy jokes, edgier satire, and stoner humor baked directly into Shaggy's dialogue. Mystery Incorporated weren't sanitized Saturday morning sitcom anymore. They were adult archetypes pushed to the extreme. Velma was gay, with a plot that tipped into her hapless crushes and even a kiss with Daphne. Fred was reimagined as vain, dim, and openly bisexual, a golden-haired narcissist who cared little about cracking mysteries and cared more about his appearance. And Shaggy, his pot references weren't subtle anymore. They were direct, with jokes about munchies and smoke filling out episodes. To Warner Brothers, the initial attraction was clear. Children who had grown up with Scooby-Doo during the 70s and 80s were now teenagers and college kids. A winking, edgier interpretation looked like just the ticket to cashing in on that retro appeal. But when the studio screened the R-rated version for testing, things imploded. Parents who took their kids out of the test screenings stormed out in outrage over cleavage gags, profanity, and references to drug use. Executives freaked. In a single overnight session, the film was neutered. Velma's lesbianism was scrubbed out, Daphne and Fred's tension was diluted, and Scooby's drug gags were removed. What was left behind was a Frankenstein's monster of a film, the skeleton of an R-rated spoof sewn into the flesh of a PG family film. Fans still see the seams today. Gags cutting off in mid-sentence, tone changes in the middle of scenes, dialogue that sounds as though it belongs to two different movies forced together. The Scooby-Doo we got was family fun, but the Scooby-Doo we didn't get was pure madness. Before director Raja Gosnell took the reins, Warner Brothers had offered the project to Brian Levant, the director behind family-friendly hits like Beethoven and the Flintstones. Levant was the obvious choice. He had already proven he could adapt cartoons and larger-than-life characters into live action. But Levant died, feeling the project wasn't a good fit during his lifetime, and the studio scrambled. They went with Gosnell, who had just made Never Been Kissed and Big Mama's House. Gosnell's less stylized, pop-oriented approach steered the film in a flashier direction, blurring some of Gunn's more jagged edges. In place of Levant's slapstick inclinations, viewers received Gosnell's glossier, music video-style sheen. But this transition only made the tonal tug-of-war more terrible, and the movie ended up stuck queasily between family comedy and parody. One of the largest what-ifs of the production was the close casting of Tim Curry. By 2002, Curry was a cult icon already because of the Rocky Horror Picture Show legend and his unforgettable performance as Pennywise in it. His extrovert personality, camp threat, and showmanship appeared made to order for Scooby-Doo's offbeat blend of comedy and terror. Warner Brothers believed it too, and they approached him with an offer. But Curry read the screenplay and took a walk. He had no interest in being involved in it, apparently turned off by what had become a diluted family farce. Fans continued to speculate on what he might have done, maybe as the owner of the theme park, perhaps a sorcerer, maybe another ostentatious villain. Losing Curry was a major loss, since he possessed the kind of energy that might have kept pace with Matthew Lillard's Shaggy step for step. In his absence, the movie relied more heavily on CGI excess and slapstick, sacrificing what might have been an unforgettable camp classic. Of course, the mayhem wasn't all off-camera. On camera, Fred and Daphne's flirtation finally materialized after years of flirting on the cartoon. What the audience didn't realize, however, was that Freddie Prinze Jr. and Sarah Michelle Gellar had already been dating when production started. The on-camera chemistry was an exaggeration of the real-life relationship, infusing scenes with heat that otherwise might have been dull. Ironically, critics grumbled that Fred and Daphne were underdeveloped characters who lacked the depth of their actual relationship. But to their fans, their casting became a pop culture time capsule. Two of the greatest teen icons of the early 2000s starring as cartoon sweethearts while being more in love in real life. Before the movie even opened, in fact, they were hitched, making Scooby-Doo a landmark in their romance, a kitschy translation that served as the building block for a relationship that would endure for decades. Linda Cardellini, on the other hand, stole the show as Velma. She prepared for the role with painstaking attention, watching tapes of Nicole Jaffe, the original voice performer from the 1969 cartoon, and emulating her cadence and clipped phrasing. Cardellini even went so far as to wear Velma's turtleneck and alter her audition to show that she could be the character. Her take was so accurate, both critics and fans agreed that she was Velma now, not merely playing her. Her version is definitive to many. Freddie Prinze Jr., however, struggled far more. The studio demanded he bleach his dark hair to fit the cartoon appearance of Fred, and the chemical process irritated his scalp. He later confessed to despising the appearance, deeming it like wearing someone else's head. It was a reminder that sometimes achieving icon status hurts. Nevertheless, Prinze Jr. wasn't above being a Scooby enthusiast himself. Years before he played Fred, he bowled by the moniker Mystery Machine, an inside joke reference to the cartoon he grew up with. It felt like destiny, if not exactly easier than he anticipated, to join Mystery Incorporated for him. Isla Fisher, long before Wedding Crashers catapulted her to comedy stardom, played Shaggy's girlfriend Mary Jane, her name itself a nod to Scooby's pot-smoking subtext, although then still somewhat unknown. Fisher was noticeable, her energetic comedic persona making Mary Jane memorable. Her Hollywood breakthrough, the role launched her into a successful comedy career. The use of CGI in the film was another controversy magnet. Scooby himself was completely computer-generated, and initial designs appalled fans, too realistic, too uncanny. Multiple redesigns were ordered by Warner Brothers before he resembled the cartoon. Even so, critics ridiculed him as resembling a PlayStation cutscene. For the actors, acting against a tennis ball attached to a stick designed to be Scooby was a cringeworthy exercise. But the final product, for all its shortcomings, brought the world a Scooby-Doo who could interact on screen with humans in a first-ever capacity. Spooky Island, the setting of the majority of the movie, was real and constructed. Exteriors were filmed at Australia's Moreton Island at the Tangalooma Resort, and interiors such as the monster dens and dance clubs were constructed on soundstages in Queensland. The effect was a surreal mixture of actual beaches and cartoon-like sets, creating the image of a fever dream theme park brought to reality. And in one of the movie's weirdest gestures, the opening cameo was Pamela Anderson playing herself, riding shotgun in the Mystery Machine. For some fans, it was a surreal moment. Anderson was not associated with the franchise, yet Warner Brothers leaned heavily on her cameo in promotion, announcing this wasn't the Scooby-Doo of Saturday mornings. And then there was Matthew Lillard, whose turn as Shaggy became the heart of the movie. His goofy drawl, high-strung laughter, and lanky posture so nicely nailed the character that audiences wholeheartedly accepted him. So much so that when Casey Kasem, the original voice of Shaggy, retired in 2009, Warner Brothers turned to Lillard to fill the role for good. Since then, he has brought Shaggy to life in more than 20 productions, from television shows to animated films to video games, making him the official Shaggy of a whole new generation. Not all of the movie's creative decisions went down so easily. The radiant essences that Scrappy's machine tore out of individuals were originally souls, but test audiences, particularly religious audiences, complained bitterly. Warner Brothers panicked and substituted every reference to souls with the more absurd term protoplasm. What might have been a darker, more otherworldly plot was made into blobs of radiant goo, yet another victim of the tone war of the film. And then there was the most polarizing turn of all, Scrappy-Doo, as the bad guy. Long